Captain's Vlog, May 18th, 2017. I want to break my hiatus once again to talk a little bit about the new Star Trek Discovery trailer. I just could not help myself. We actually kind of have two trailers, although mostly the same footage is in both. There's a Netflix trailer, which don't get too excited if you live here in the United States, because as was previously reported quite a while back, Netflix is going to be carrying Discovery internationally, but we're not getting it on Netflix until quite a while down the road. It's going to be on CBS All Access first. For a second, I got really excited when I saw that trailer, because I saw it first, and I was like, oh, cool. Maybe they're abandoning the CBS All Access thing, and they're just going to make it as one big season, put it all out like they should have in the first place. And that is not what's going on. I had forgotten for a second. Oh, yes, that's right. Internationally, it's going to Netflix. So the rest of the world, or most of the rest of the world, is going to get this the way I think we should have gotten it in the first place. But if we want to watch it here in America as it's coming out, we're going to have to pay for All Access. It's going to be 15 episodes, which is a pretty big whopping number, I think. I would have expected your standard 12 or 13 for a thing that is being essentially produced the same way you would make a thing for Netflix, and Fuller and his team had described it as, and of course he's not show running anymore, but they had described it as being an ongoing narrative and one big story told in chapters, like House of Cards or anything else that you get all at one time on Netflix, which is, again, is partly why I wish we weren't getting it week to week on any platform unless it was on television. But even still, I kind of wish it was all coming out at one time, and but that's maybe not a big deal to folks that don't mind waiting. It's just, it's Star Trek. It's one of my big favorite things, and one of the big things I care most about. I'm going to have to watch it as it's coming out, and we'll probably have to cough up my $6 or $8 or whatever it is for All Access in order to do that. But that's the last I will say about that whole thing. 15 episodes is kind of exciting. Originally, Fuller had said 13, and that he was hoping that subsequent seasons they would only have to deal with 10. Now they've jumped it all the way to 15. So that's what we've got. We've got some new information with the trailer, and also just things the producers have revealed here and there. Let's talk just first a little bit about the look of the thing. I think a lot of folks are likely to look at this trailer and assume that it's set in the Abrams-verse, and indeed, Fuller had gone on record when he was still involved with the project, or more involved. He's still technically a producer, and they might bring him back down the road. I really hope that happens, but he's working on American Gods, and they had to drop him, if you don't know, because they didn't like all the delays and how little progress CBS thought was being made on the show as he was working on his other projects. So he had to. So he was asked to step away from it, and he says if they ask him to come back and work on the show subsequently, he will. But right now, it's the other producers that were there, of which there are many. There's a couple of showrunners now, and they are taking you know, his and Kurtzman's original pitch and all of their ideas, and the scripts that they and Meyer and of course some other folks had including like Joe Menosky and some other people had put together, and they're running with it. So it's not going to be exactly the show that Fuller would have made, but I think it's likely to be pretty darn close. But what I was going to say is Fuller had initially said that it was designed to be able to fit in either, which is kind of odd considering how super continuity heavy it is and all of the real deep pull references that it seems like they're going to, and how very smack dab in the middle of certain events, or just before certain events, it is in the timelines. And so you've in the timeline for Prime. So he says, you know, it's supposed to be, it's very clearly Prime continuity, but that it could have kind of been in either. And as I say, I think the look of it looks pretty Abrams-ish, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I like the look of it quite a bit. I think it's I think it looks pretty cool. I think the production values are amazing. I'm very excited that they're getting $6 to $7 million per episode. That's fantastic, and I just hope that it does well enough on that platform, and then Netflix after that, that they're able to continue making it moving forward. But anyway, at the very least, we'll get one good solid season, because they knew how many episodes they had to make. But anyway, so when you look at those outfits, when you look at the even cinematography, you know, we do that Abrams thing where you go down a corridor and the camera like turns like this as you're moving down a corridor, and something about like some of the makeup, like Doug Jones' character, which I'm really excited that he's in the show. He's Abe Sapien, and in the Hellboy movies, and he plays the alien who says that his species exists in order to see death coming. He's got that big ominous line in the trailer, and it is coming right now, and that's who that is. Anyway, fantastic looking makeup job, by the way, but it looks like something I might have expected out of the Abrams movies. And then there's a guy that has a headset piece thing on the bridge that reminds me of something out of one of those movies, and even the way the lighting is done, not straight up lens flare, but some light kind of blocking people's faces and stuff. It looks like it's at least pretty influenced by what the Abrams era movies have been doing. So that's an interesting choice. That's not exactly what I expected it to look like. And as I say, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think it might confuse some people getting in to watch the show that haven't been following the production. So let's talk about number one. That is the lead character in the show. She's said to not be the captain, but I think if you just look at the trailer, and again, you're not looking at any other information about the show, you might be confused by that and expect that at some point she becomes the captain or something. Being called number one, I'm assuming she's the first officer on the ship. I don't know that for sure, but I don't know why else you would be called that, especially because she's apparently not Majel Barrett's number one. Now they're saying that that's supposed to be an homage, and originally Fuller wanted her name to only be number one. Now she's Commander Burnham, and she's but they call her number one as a nickname, kind of like Riker, I guess. And it's also kind of odd that she's never called number one in the trailer anywhere, now that I'm thinking about it. But I guess it's possible that she will turn out to be the same character, even though she and Majel Barrett, of course, look nothing alike and have different ethnicities. I guess that's possible. What's really interesting about it is that the background we know for her so far would be a fine explanation for why number one is as stolid and no nonsense and described as being kind of machine-like, because she is this Burnham character, who again is supposed to be our main character. She is raised on Vulcan, apparently, and there's a lot of things in the trailer that I think are a little bit misleading, and not intentionally. I think perhaps they just had a difficult time, the producers of the show, putting together a trailer that wouldn't give away too much, but would also excite people and show them just how large in scope this thing is going to be. Because that's the big thing I took from it is, oh wow, this is huge. You know, it's called Discovery. It's about what Star Trek is always about. It's about going out and finding new life, new civilizations, discovering things, but it's also about the politics of the Alpha Quadrant, and it looks like there's a looming war brewing with the Klingons, and and I'll talk about the Klingon thing in a minute, because that's really interesting. Their look is so different, and I don't know what we're doing with that yet, but anyway, you've got all of these different pieces, and so a lot of that, like, there are assumptions that I would have made just looking at this trailer without doing any other extra research that would have been wrong. And so one of those big things is that she looks like she's two things. First, I'll go back to the thing I was talking about a minute ago and discuss Burnham, number one, as not being the captain in the show. So at the beginning of the trailer, we're in a desert, and her commanding officer from a different ship. And I think the ship that they bring in actually is the Discovery, but she's the captain. I'm not sure. It looks similar in design to what we've seen before, and I'm sure folks know that, so feel free to leave it in the comments, but I wasn't sure right off. Anyway, she is the captain of this other ship, and Burnham has been working with her for 7 years, she says, which I wonder if that's not an intentional nod to the fact that most Star Trek shows have gone that long, or the majority of them anyway, 3 out of 5. Went 7 years, and so it's almost like there's this other TV show that we didn't even see that ran for 7 seasons, and now she's being talked about as being given her own command. But she's not going to get her own command. She is, as far as I can tell, the first officer, or one of the ranking officers on the Discovery, under another captain who is played by, I'll see if I can get his name up real quick because I forget, who is played by the guy who played Lucius Malfoy in the Harry Potter movies, which I'm really excited to see, and was a little bit bummed not to see him in this trailer anywhere, but I imagine that something awful happens that gets him in that seat, that maybe he wasn't supposed to be there in the first place or something. It seems like they're concealing him for a particular reason, or maybe they're not even showing us much yet of what's actually going on the Discovery. I can't tell if we're mostly on that other ship, or if it's or if we're actually on the Discovery. But anyway, so give me 1 second, and so the Shinzao is the ship that she was serving on before with that other captain that we see at the beginning, and that's Captain Gorgu, and then the captain of the Discovery, of course, is Jason Isaacs, and that's Captain Lorca. But we don't see him in the this trailer, and curiously, he's very far down the list of characters on Wikipedia and IMDb, so I'm not sure what's going on with that yet, so that'll be really interesting. But if I were just watching this trailer, I would assume that she was going to be the captain. I also would have assumed that the Vulcan that we see throughout the trailer raised her, and that Vulcan, if you're not aware, is Sarek. It's not just some other ambassador or important commander or subcommander or something. That actually is Sarek. And it's played by the guy who played Galavan in Gotham, which is hilarious, and that guy has got to be one of the least typecast people I've ever seen. He looks like potentially good casting. He's not trying to do a Mark Leonard. He's definitely doing his own thing there, and I will reserve judgment until I actually see the show. But this thing is going to have a lot more references and characters from the original series than I think anybody realizes, and I wouldn't be surprised if something Enterprise were to pop up as well. I mean, it's like this is set like 80 years after that, but so is TNG, and we got some TOS things, so I think that it might kind of serve as a sequel to Enterprise for the, 15 people that will care about that. I say that. People got really excited with the Enterprise references and beyond, and the way that movie built on Enterprise, so I don't know, maybe just the fact that it's paying attention to pre-established continuity, regardless of how many people actually like that continuity, will excite people, and I have to say that I'm certainly kind of one of those people that, even though I have plenty of issues with Enterprise, and it's more than hit and miss for me, if there's like an elderly Scott Bakula, or if he has a like note he made for someone that we get to see or something, that would be really cool. So, but anyway, so it looks for a second like maybe she's raised by him, and I doubt very seriously if that's where we're going, but we see a flashback with her as a child with him, and he doesn't look like he's aged at all, which is appropriate, because once you hit a certain age as a Vulcan, it seems like you really don't age that much, mostly just because we always cast, 30-something actors to play Vulcans that are supposed to be in their 60s or older, except for Spock, who in the original series really was in his mid-30s and about the same age as Kirk, but then you get to Enterprise, and T'Pol is supposed to be like in her 60s, because we start saying, Vulcans live a really long time, and we like to have younger-looking Vulcans who actually are older than, so I assume that they hit an age, and then they don't seem to age much until they get a whole lot older, but I digress. So, is it possible that that's not just like her in I don't know why Sarek would be dealing with a little kid on Vulcan, but whatever that situation is it possible that she was raised by him and with Spock? Maybe. That would be really strange, and I would be surprised if we went there. You never get that sense that, that he was raised with any other siblings. He doesn't talk about Sybok, but that's because Sybok was kind of an outcast, and that's a retroactive thing we get a lot later in Star Trek V. I always I assume, as I'm sure everybody does, that Spock was raised as an only child, and it would just really complicate and confuse things if he was raised with a human sibling. When he is half human, and where she's trying to be Vulcan, and she's not fully managing it and succeeding at it. But it also doesn't seem like she's born there, because he says she can't learn Vulcan. Presumably he means the language, and it'd be really cool if we fleshed out that language some, because it is a beautiful sounding thing. The bits of it that we get in what is it? Wrath of Khan, and there's a couple other places, but it would be really, and I think Enterprise gives us a little bit too, but it would be really cool if we got some more of that language. But anyway, so I'm assuming that like as a kid she maybe comes to Vulcan and is I mean I don't know how she could be born there, honestly, unless there were like some humans living there, and since they're part of the Federation, I don't know why that wouldn't be possible. So that is a possibility too, but I don't know, I guess I'm jumping all over the place, but I guess the main thing I'm getting out of this trailer and information I have is, boy, this is all really intriguing, and I can't wait to find out what actually is going on. Having a human raised on Vulcan is a cool idea. It is it immediately, of course, evokes kind of a flip of the Spock thing, where he's half human, raised as a Vulcan, but the human part of him is always fighting with the logical Vulcan part, and that's supposed to be a metaphor for everyone's internal conflict, trying to find that that midpoint, that balance between our emotion and our logic, our reason. And it looks like we're probably going to have that with her some too, but backwards, where she's a human who like in the first place, who tried to live on Vulcan. And I think that's a cool idea. I'm excited to see what we do with that. It's interesting that this is only 10 years before the original series, because we could recast major characters in the original series who could have things to do. Spock would only be 25 at this point. From everything I've looked up as far as like when he's supposed to be born and stuff, it seems like the consensus is 2330, and that would put him at 25 years old, and he would have been 35 when the original series starts, when the 5-year mission starts. So I'm assuming that Sarek will make mention of him, and that he is out there doing something. I mean, he could still just be at the Academy, or he could already be on a ship. It's possible the Enterprise would, and I think the Enterprise was supposed to be his first posting, but I'm not sure, and I'm sure Stardates and stuff, this is information that is canonical and gettable, but I'm not sure just exactly how far before the rest of the events of the original series, when you get to Kirk, the cage is. And I don't want to take too much stock in this, because I think this is just a mistake on the part of whoever put this trailer together, but it is simply untrue that this is 10 years before the Enterprise, because we know, because it says, like, it's just inaccurate. It says at the beginning of the trailer, 10 years before Kirk and Spock and the Enterprise. Well, Kirk and Spock being on the Enterprise, sure, but 10 years before the Enterprise, it's saying 10 years before the 5-year mission, presumably, and that's the assumption that everybody watching this seems to be making. Well, it can't be 10 years before the Enterprise because the Enterprise launched before that happened, and it wasn't with Kirk, it was with Pike, and Spock was there also. So that's not a big deal or anything, but I think that's also a thing that is liable to confuse people a little bit here and there. It's not the kind of massive, crazy, confusing thing as saying like so many years before the original Ghostbusters when you're making a remake of that. It's not like that, but it's but I was a little bit surprised to see them like, no, it's not really 10 years before the Enterprise, and I don't mean to nitpick about it, but that gave me pause, and it's just another one of those things that I think some people are gonna kind of wonder about. Let's talk about the Klingons. The main Klingon guy that we see a couple of times that's in what looks like this really ancient kind of like Great Hall looking place, and then he's in what looks like a tomb. And there's a lot of speculation that he might be some kind of an ancient Klingon that they resurrect or something, and there's something weirdly Egyptian about all of that. And he doesn't look like all the other Klingons, and I had to watch this a few times before I realized that they're not another species. For a minute, I thought we were seeing two different species, and oh no, they're all together. They're all in the same room together. We have these Klingons that have less pronounced forehead ridges. Pretty sure they had forehead ridges, but again, less pronounced, and they have these kind of like skeletal prosthetics that make them look almost like a cross between, not with ears or anything, but almost a cross between like the Remans and Klingons. And they, and I don't know how, unless you're just taking creative license, I don't know how exactly that weird facial structure thing ends up happening from Enterprise to now. And then you have this other Klingon that looks a little bit more like a traditional Klingon, but it's still a real different looking makeup job. And some of that, again, might just be creative license. But it looks like, because we have two totally different looks, that it is intentional, and so I'm not criticizing it, it's just interesting. I don't know what we're doing with that. I don't know what the Klingons are yet. And they have, with the Next Generation look, we kind of went to a lot of kind of Eastern influence with kind of some you know Japanese looking warrior garb, and now we have what looks like kind of a cross between, like I said, kind of maybe an Egyptian look, and just glimpses that I got. I might not think this at all in the context of it and seeing more of it, but it looks like at least that room, there were things that kind of reminded me of ancient Egypt. And then we have now just like straight up chainmail, which is interesting because that's what the Klingons in original series had, but it's not that kind of chainmail. It's more like, I don't know, it's more like what this is a weird thing to reference, but what the, like, 2014 Ninja Turtles had on the front of their shells. Like, it looks like that, and that's a lot more, you know, Eastern inspired. So I don't know what's going on with all that. I'm just kind of describing it. It's interesting. I don't know what we're doing there. I read that, and I think it's that Klingon, I'm assuming it's that Klingon, that he's supposed to be this like, trying to unite the Klingons together. They're all splintered and fractured, which happens a lot with the Klingons. And then there's all this talk about unity from the Federation perspective, talking about a cause that brings us together and that a leader needs that. And so it looks like that we're kind of doing some paralleling there, where I don't know what exactly is going on in the Federation right now, but it seems like, you know, thematically, the big idea for this first season is probably going to be, you know, unifying your people together for a common cause. And I expect that it's probably going to be about how it's awful when that common cause has to be war, and that's not what the Federation is supposed to be about. But then, and it might be necessary sometimes to do violence in order to, you know, save yourselves and your society, but also you have the added bonus, if you can call it that, of bringing people together. And maybe that's not the way we want to do that in order to be a civilized, enlightened society. So we'll see what all that ends up being about. Other things, I read that Harry Mudd is going to be in the show, and that's one of the things that makes me think we're going to see a whole bunch of other characters that we are familiar with or hear reference to them, and I don't know how much screen time he's going to get and how often we're going to get him, but he's played by Rainn Wilson, who amusingly got his start in Galaxy Quest, so his career is getting kind of full circle, and I think he's a perfect choice for Harry Mudd, so that's going to be potentially a really cool thing, or he could be really annoying. I'm not the world's biggest Harry Mudd fan, but I don't know, it'll be interesting to see what we do with him. Overall, I'm stoked. I'm very excited about this show. I think the trailer does a good job of keeping things real hush-hush and not telling me too much, but giving me just enough that I am really intrigued. But I also, as I said, think that there are a few things here and there that are a little misleading, and that if I hadn't looked at more information, I would have jumped to the wrong conclusions. But they're all... None of those are things that would necessarily be deal breakers for people. It's just I think it's just kind of poor communication before it's anything. Again, I don't think it's intentional. I don't think anybody's going to watch that show and be like, oh, I thought that Vulcan guy was her father. I'm not interested in the show anymore. It's not going to be like that. But I don't think. But on the other hand, there are, I think, some things strategically I would have done differently in selling the show, and I'm assuming we'll get some more. We'll get to see more of it before it comes out. There'll be another trailer or two, I would imagine. But and I think in this particular case there should be. This is not one of those situations where I'm looking at this going, oh, I don't want to see anything else. I could use a little more. I mean, I love going into things cold, but I just mean to get more of a sense of what the basic premise is would be cool. We know that it's supposed to be a major event that is talked about in Star Trek, but that we've never seen. And, of course, it's not Axanar, because that happens well before that. But it could be something that has to do with the fallout of that. And the big thing that fans are kind of gravitating toward, they're trying to keep that hush-hush, but we know exactly what year this happens in. So the only thing that seems to make sense, and we, of course, Klingons are majorly involved in this show, seem to be the big race we're dealing with. It seems to be. It's there in around that time, in that very year, there is a Klingon Cold War going on, called the I think the 4 Years War, and that's referenced in the original series, I think. So that is probably what it is, and that's not a thing that's talked about and speculated a whole lot about in Star Trek. But yeah, it's not. I don't think that is as big of a thing as like the Earth Romulan War, which would have been a really cool thing to see, but it would have been so soon after Enterprise that it would have had to have been just a direct Enterprise sequel. It would be hard to believe that Archer and his crew wouldn't have been really significantly involved in that. Would be really cool. This, of course, is asking too much. This is real wishful thinking on my part, but it would be really cool if we ever did anything with Romulans to get flashbacks to that war and to see some of those characters reprise their roles. But I doubt very seriously if we get that. I do think Romulans will happen very quickly. It'll be interesting to see how we continue to conceal them, considering that we're not dealing with original series technology, which was the main reason that in Balance of Terror, we're told that we didn't know what the Romulans looked like when we fought in that war, because they didn't have ship-to-ship communication yet, and so it was a lot easier for the Romulans to not reveal that they were offshoots of the Vulcans. But that, and I'm sure, I mean, I bet 2 episodes in, it'll become really clear that this has to be your prime continuity, and that you can't easily fit it in either place, just because one big thing, of course, is just if the Romulans are concealed at all, okay, it's prime continuity. And once again, it is prime continuity. That's not a thing I'm speculating about. I'm just saying that initially the idea was that it was being developed as something that could kind of fit in either. And I think if people don't know about that, they're going to think, and don't know that it's been said that it's Prime, they might think that what they're watching is Abrams' continuity for a minute. But the reason I say we'll probably do Romulans pretty early is because Fuller says that one of the big things he was inspired by was Balance of Terror. And I'm sure with just this first season, he's mostly talking about kind of tone and atmosphere and the kind of stories he wants to tell. And I can totally see that in this trailer. But yeah, I'm really excited to finally get, and I've said this before, a Star Trek that is an ongoing story and not an episodic thing. And I think the idea of having a show that is about one character before it's anybody else that we have an eyes in is great. I'm really looking forward to that, and the idea that that person's not a captain is really cool too, even though I'm sure people are going to look at this and think that she's the captain. But anyway, it's I've got no beef with the look of it. Production values, like I said, look really cool. The uniforms are whatever. I think they look good. I think I say whatever because I don't see how you get from something that looks as military as that looks relatively to the more casual look of the original series, and it's odd, and we kind of did this with Enterprise too, especially with like rank pips and things, that you would have a thing, and then you would have a big gap, and then you would go back to that thing like 100 years later. It's like we have one-piece jumpsuits, and then we go to, and I guess we've had that in some of the Abrams movies too. But you had like the one-piece jumpsuit, and then you go to a tunic and pants, and then you go back to the one-piece jumpsuit by TNG era. But that's you know, that's neither here nor there. But I'm sure. I felt like I would be remiss if I didn't bring up the costumes. I think they look good. I like that there's a lot of color in this show. It certainly looks like a world where, you know, rough things can happen, of course, but it looks like Star Trek, and it looks like the Starfleet and the Federation are about what they're supposed to be about, and this is in good hands. I hate that Fuller is not showrunning it anymore, but we have a lot of people working on this who have worked on Trek before, who clearly understand that property and who know how to make Starfleet be about what it's supposed to be about. You know, this altruistic group and the Federation, to show a positive future where things can still go wrong, and people, like, what's interesting about Star Trek to me is what's interesting about Superman, where you have a character, you have an entity that has figured out how to be the ideal, and the difficulty is hanging on to that, is not being turned into something else. And how hard is it to keep our emotions in check and to continue to uphold those ideals? So anyway, thanks a lot for watching. Sure appreciate it. Leave your comments below. Let me know what you think about the new Star Trek Discovery trailer. I'm really glad that we can be sure that it's finally going to come out. They've said fall. We have a trailer. I think it's unlikely now that it gets pushed back any farther than it has. And we don't have a definite release date yet, but I think we can be pretty sure that it will actually happen this year now. So that's really exciting. Thanks for watching, folks. Sure appreciate it. And I will see you again with Alien Covenant. That's the next thing we're doing. Eric and I are going to go see that tonight. We're going to do how we felt about it. And we hadn't planned on doing a spoiler cast, but now we're talking about doing one with Rasco, because he really wanted to come on the channel and talk to us about that movie. So that will probably happen next week sometime. I am still hip deep in the middle of my novel, and I'm still technically on hiatus, except for the occasional thing like this that I'm putting out. And I don't want to, I don't want to give a definite date as to when I'm going to be back, but it should be sooner rather than later. So anyway, thanks once again for watching. I sure appreciate you folks. And in the meantime, I am Captain Logan, and I'll see you again soon.